Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. You are listening to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast session number 108. I am your host once again this week for the 108th time. My name is Dan Matson, also known as Wooden Boat Dan, and this is the world's first podcast fully dedicated 150% to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels around the world. Thanks for tuning in today, folks. Great to have you on board as usual. Got some fun stuff planned today. In case you don't know, this podcast is all about getting in the wooden boat game. So if you don't want to be tempted and cajoled and sucked into the game, you better turn the podcast off now. Because once you start listening, you're going to get hooked and you're going to be out building boats and buying boats and varnishing boats and having fun like the rest of us. It's a great way to go, though. What a blast. Today's extra special segment, extra special, is an interview I did with Laura Prendergast. Laura is the Director of Marketing. Now, I don't know if that's her official title, but that's kind of what she does, along with a lot of other things, at Pygmy Boats in Port Townsend, Washington. And if you recall, I interviewed the founder of Pygmy Boats earlier. Actually, it's been a year ago. It's been about a year ago. I interviewed John Lockwood. Actually turned into 2 episodes. Had a great story there. So today I'm interviewing Laura, kind of hear her personal story about her outdoor activities, how she started boating, how she ended up at Pygmy. And then Laura talks a little bit about Pygmy Boats and some of the stuff that they're up to. It's a lot of fun. Laura's a real fun person to chat with, very enthusiastic about what she does, which is always cool. So stick around for that interview in a few minutes. There were no wooden boat activities to attend this past week, which is a real bummer for me. I love going to fairs and festivals and get-togethers and whatever, talking shop and touching the finely varnished bright work on beautiful wooden vessels. But anyway, I did work on my scamp this week. I'm getting really close to having it fully assembled. I'm into the boat 200 hours now even. 200 hours even, yeah. And $4,493 invested. Now, are there cheaper ways to build this boat? Yeah, there is. You could use less expensive epoxy. You could use less expensive plywood and cut it out yourself instead of buying the kit. But I'm trying to make this a first-class boat. Do it right from the get-go, so I've chosen to use the kit and the good epoxy and the good stuff and do a good job on the boat. So the last 10 days or so, I've been working on the cabin sides for the boat, which sounds pretty simple, but this is one of those things. Have you ever looked at boat plans and you're well into building your boat and you look at the plans and you look at the parts and you just scratch your head and go, something doesn't connect here. It's kind of one of those deals with the cabin sides. When I got them into position on the side of the cabin, they kind of overlap the carlins. They go below the tops of the carlins. And when they go below the tops of carlins, then they go below the top of the cabin top where the bulkheads support the cabin tops and leave a little gap there. The plans don't show a gap there, so it's a little confusing. But anyway, what I've done is I actually took the time to custom cut some cleats that fit on the top of the cabin sides and then laminated a strip below that to give it a nice finished look on the side of the boat, on the cabin side as it meets the cabin top. So it's been very labor intensive. I've been using my little low angle block plane, which, by the way, I really need to improve my tool sharpening skills, shall we say. I tend to use my tools till they're way too dull and it makes more work, and then I eventually jump in and sharpen them. But anyway, so it was very labor intensive to actually make these cleats for the cabin sides where they meet the cabin top. So I've spent, I don't know how many hours, 6 or 8 or 10 hours doing that, but I've got the parts all cut out and laminated now. The next trick is to clamp the cabin top down, and you've got to put quite a bit of pressure on it because it's a pretty extreme curve for this 6 millimeter plywood. I believe it is 6 millimeter, not 8. And so anyway, so I'm working on that. My goal is to get that done this week, finish the rudder, and then I'm hoping to actually launch the boat in a small lake near my home, get some pictures of it in the water, go paddle around a little bit, have a little fun with it, and then I'm going to advertise it on Craigslist, Small Craft Advisor magazine, Port Townsend Pocket Yachters, and probably Wooden Boat magazine. As an assembled scamp kit is the way I'm going to sell it. And as I mentioned before, my price is going to be $7,000. So anyway, that's the update on the scamp. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those things, though, where the farther I get into the project, I get really close to being done, and it's easy for me to get impatient. Now, if you've ever experienced that, you know what I mean. Because you're like, okay, I want to get this thing done now. I want to move on to my next project. Anyway, it's coming together, and I'm going to wrap it up this week and thinking about my next boat. And I'm not sure what, I might build a Pygmy kayak, or I might build a strip-built boat. I haven't decided for sure yet. But last week I actually cleaned up my kayak, or my canoe, Chelan, which I had not cleaned up since I took it to the boat festival in Port Townsend in September, used it in the salt water, got it kind of dirty. And so I got it all cleaned up and actually hung it in my garage on the port gunnel. It's hanging from 2 spots, and I tried to make it so that it won't leave an impression on the freshly varnished, 2 months ago varnished gunnels. So I've got it hanging, so I've actually got my car in the garage, which is pretty cool. So that's the update for me on the boats. I'd like to give a shout out to new subscribers to the monthly newsletter and email list, Robert Becker and Dazul Jian. Thanks, guys, for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, it's really a good deal. It's free. I send out a monthly newsletter, which I've got on the docket for this week. I like the word docket. It sounds like pocket or locket, or there's not only a couple words that sound like that. Anyway, you get a newsletter monthly, and then I send out an occasional email and talk about upcoming things that I'm going to be attending and the possibility of meeting you there. So check it out. Go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. Give me your first and last name, email address, and you'll be in like Flint. I did get some listener voicemail feedback this week from Carl White in Baltimore, Maryland. So I'm going to play that tape here. It's about 1 minute and 20 seconds. Take it away, Carl.
Hello, this is Carl White from Baltimore, Maryland. I just subscribed to your... Okay, excuse my 2-year-old. I just subscribed to your... Okay, I guess she wants to be on the radio. At any rate, just subscribe to the podcast and really enjoy it. I have been going back and forth to the Annapolis Boat Show and have been listening to your podcast in my hour commute down there the last couple of days. And I actually got a chance to run into CNC Boats and check those guys out. Thanks to your interview with them. I'm 6'7", and trying to get a boat is really difficult because I want to do some blue water cruising and don't want to be knocking up against bulkheads all over the place. It's not good to be unconscious when you're sailing. So at any rate, I think I'm going to build a fiberglass cold molded boat out of plywood. I think that technology has been vetted enough, and it should be able to give me a very light craft that should meet my needs. At any rate, keep up the good work, and hopefully I'll make it to the Wooden Boat Show, or you come east, and look forward to continue to learn from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl, for your kind comments about the podcast. I'm glad you found me and you're enjoying the interviews and so on. And it's awesome that you were able to check out the CLC boats. And cold molded boat sounds awesome. I mean, they're really amazing boats. As I'm sure you listened to the interview last week with Sean Kuman on episode 107, where he talks about cold molded boats and the advantages of that, being very strong and light and that kind of stuff. So anyway, keep me posted, Carl. I'd love to hear how that goes down the road. Shoot me some pictures or whatever to share with the community. Okay, we're going to move on to the interview with Laura Prendergast of Pygmy Boats. So let's go ahead and roll the tape. Okay, it is August 15th, 2013. I am in the offices of Pygmy Boats in Port Townsend, Washington at Point Hudson Marina. Is that right, Laura?
That's
so
right.
Far? Okay,
yep,
and I'm sitting with
point.
Laura Prendergast. Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. 2 for 2 so far. Who is the Director of Marketing at Pygmy Kayak. So welcome to the podcast, Laura.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We've been talking about doing this for a while, and I happened to bop in today, and Laura had some free time, so I said, let's do an interview. So I appreciate your willingness to do that. So tell me a little bit about your personal history.
Well, I grew up in Texas, on the rivers mostly. So we spent a lot of time swimming on rivers. We did some kayaking growing up. And then I started desiring mountains, so that took me to Colorado. And from Colorado, I decided I wanted some ocean with my mountains, and so that brought me to Washington.
Wow, okay. And so how much boating did you do as a kid? Did you do any boating? Or
Just a little bit. Really just a little kayaking on the rivers, is that allowed? But those rivers are a little tumultuous. They're either high flooding or they're really bony. So kayaking down there sometimes is more like walking a dog, where you're dragging
really?
the boat behind you and trying
really?
to get it through the shallow patches. But when it's good, it's really beautiful. Large cypress trees.
and what rivers were you on?
The Guadalupe. And we did a lot of tubing, too. That's a really popular.
And where was that again?
In the hill country of Texas.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. I guess I don't think of rivers in Texas. I don't know why. But.
Yeah, the hill country is kind of this little oasis in the middle of Texas where a bunch of rivers meet. There's the Frio and the Guadalupe and kind of just some really beautiful spots, gigantic cypress trees. My hometown, Kerrville, was founded around the cypress trees. There was actually a mill there, and that's what brought people to settle there.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you grew up, and then you moved to Colorado?
I did after college. I went to school in Austin, and then I moved to Colorado.
So what did you study in college?
Sociology and graphic design. So I was really interested in marketing, but I for some reason I wanted to avoid the business department.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really was interested in social psychology. Was my fascination.
So that's an interesting combination,
Yeah.
sociology and graphic arts.
Yeah, and a lot of people were questioning how those were going to blend, and they have really. They've worked out well in that you study people and you get this. A lot of social psychology is looking at what marketing's doing.
Yeah.
And so trying to understand social psychology and what motivates people and
using that for your graphics art skills.
yeah, and
too.
I was always really interested in art and graphic design and how that influences people. And I guess really I was concerned about some marketing seems to be a little evil. It's like I didn't want to sell high fructose corn syrup to people in third world countries. So I always knew that I wanted to market a product that I thought was going to be really cool and worth trying to put out there. I didn't want to stand behind something that I didn't believe in. So
very cool. That's kind of the way I am. If I don't believe in something, I don't want to sell it.
Sure.
To anybody.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, there's a few people out there that do that, and that's not a good thing. So what other things did you learn that you've applied in your business today?
In college?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Probably a lot of stuff.
Yeah, lots of
hard
general
question.
questions. Yeah, but I feel like I went to St. Edward's in Austin, and it was a wonderful education. And
Not a private school.
it's a private school. Yeah,
Yeah.
I played soccer there. So
Oh wow.
yeah, so that was fun. But they did such a good job of preparing us for this kind of changing environment, especially in marketing. You've seen that go with social media and all the electronics. I mean, in my graphic design classes, they were teaching us web design, so I obviously use that in my job today.
Yeah.
Graphic design of all sorts, like be it labels, whether I'm putting a label on plans or working on an ad for Wooden Boat magazine or Sea Kayaker magazine. So I'm constantly using that graphic design in combination with my understanding of social psychology.
Cool. I need to hire you for my website to do a few things.
I'm
I think
pretty
some of
busy.
my colors don't line up too well sometimes.
Well, when I'm not here, ideally I'm outside doing something, so I try not to take on too many other jobs.
Although I
That's my
found a
balance.
really cool website that allows you to create free graphics for your website called Free Graphic Creator. I don't want to get sidetracked here, but it's got like
Yeah.
a button for add to cart and things that have been proven to increase your conversion rate huge.
Cool. Yeah.
So anyway, I decided to throw that in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, we can talk about that.
Yes.
I could go on and on about that.
Yeah, okay. So you went to Colorado to ski?
Yeah, and to just
get
get
to
some
the
mountains.
mountains
I kind of discovered the mountains when I was younger and got on a backpacking trip. I had an aunt who was really awesome and took all of us backpacking at 15. So she had a bunch of teenagers she was willing to haul up into the mountains for 3 days and teach us how to
Really?
backpack. And it excited me so much to get up on top of a mountain. It was so beautiful. The air was fresh. It smelled like pine. It was so beautiful. I couldn't wait to get back. So when I realized after graduating from college, wow, I can do anything with my life. I can go anywhere. It's like, well, let's go to the mountains. My best friend and I moved with a couple other friends, and
Okay.
we all went to Durango, Colorado.
Durango, Colorado?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is that near Denver? Or?
Oh gosh, everyone says that. You
Yeah.
get calls when you're living
You
in
think
Durango.
of
It says,
Denver first.
yeah, it's about 8 hours away.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's down in the southwest corner, so near Utah and,
Oh, wow.
and
There
New
are Four
Mexico.
Corners.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've never been to Four Corners. I like the name, though.
Yeah, well, it's a neat conversion of desert and mountains, so it's
Yeah.
kind of that point where
Yeah.
all of that meets.
So how long were you in Colorado?
I was there for 6-7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did you work while you were there then?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, what kind of work did you do?
I started off doing graphic design for the school district, and so I was helping them with they had some graduate programs, so I was helping them manage their classes online, and then I went from there to actually a phone book company doing graphic design, which I learned a lot. You know, it can be a little boring designing for yellow pages, but it was very educational. And then kind of worked my way from there into marketing director for a company called Buzztown, which was kind of an offshoot, a social media site. So that I learned a lot about marketing there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was all within the same company, so it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun there. I learned a lot.
Okay, so what was your next move then, Laura, after Colorado?
Well, after Colorado, my husband said, you know, I've been thinking about this boat building school. And I said, what? People do what? They build wooden boats? And he said, yeah, it's in Port Townsend or near Port Townsend. He said, I've been there once, and it was really neat. And, you know, it's come to find out he has journals from 10 years ago where he'd come up to visit, and he'd met people who were in wooden boat school, and it kind of planted the seed where he just thought one day, wouldn't that be neat to have that so much skill that you could actually build a boat. So I had no idea that this existed in his mind, and he said, let's go, let's do it. And at the time I said, no way, it's a recession. I've got a good job. I'm not quitting my job. That sounds ridiculous. And he said, well, just, you know, let's go visit. So we did. We came up and visited, and I immediately fell in love with the area.
In Port Hadlock at the Northwest School Wooden Boat Building.
Yeah, but we came down to Port Townsend too, and he
Okay.
said, what do you think about this area? And it was a foggy, rainy day, which is pretty typical Northwest.
Kind of like today.
Kind of like today,
Yeah.
even though it's August. Or Fogust, as everyone says.
Fogust, I
Yeah.
hadn't heard that before.
And there were all these masts poking out through the fog, and it just pulled on all my romantic existential strings. And I thought, yes, I could definitely live here. This is beautiful.
Yeah. What year was that?
That would have been 3 years ago.
3 years
So we
ago.
came up and checked it out, and then we actually decided to take some time off. We knew we were going to move, and we were looking at moving here, but we decided to go travel. So we actually loaded surfboards up on top of a truck and went to Mexico for 6 months and traveled
really?
in Mexico. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know you did all this fun stuff.
Yeah, I try to travel as I can, which, yeah.
So you surfed in Mexico for 6 months.
Yeah. Yep, that was great. That was really great.
What part of Mexico?
We spent a lot of time in Michoacan and Jalisco and Guerrero, so mostly mainland central.
You learned Spanish, or did you already know Spanish? Or?
I had a little bit of Spanish from previous travels, and I'm better now. I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then after Mexico, what happened?
Well, after that, I was kind of at that point going, well, let's keep traveling. Here we have got all this free time, and we're not quite sure what we want to do next. Like, I was ready to go to the next continent. Let's go to Asia. But at that point, Griffin said, I really am curious about this boat building. He'd been building houses for a while at that point and doing a bunch of alternative house construction, and was doing a bunch of cob and straw bale in Colorado, and really liked the round corners and starting to get into woodworking, and so
outside the box kind of stuff.
Yeah, really beautiful, kind of sculpting these beautiful houses. Huh. And so at that point, he said he was pretty ready to go to boat school, and I said, great, let's do it, let's move. So we did. We went back to Colorado and packed everything up out of a storage unit and fit it all in a truck, a trailer, and a Subaru.
Oh, really?
And drove out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was 2011?
That was 2011. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then tell me what happened when you got here.
Well, I guess I should back up to that misty day a year before where we were standing out at Point Hudson, actually where we're doing the interview right now.
Yeah.
And Griffin said, well, this would be great. I'd love to come to boat school here, but what would you do? And at the time, we were standing right in front of Pygmy, and I think I kind of gestured towards the Pygmy sign and said, well, I'd love to work for them. They're such a cool company. Maybe I'd do their marketing. Just kind of passing said this. And
so you knew a little bit about Pygmy?
I did. Point? I had seen the Paddle to Seattle documentary in Durango. Oh. Mm-hmm. And that was, I thought it was such a cool concept that somebody was making kits for people to build their own boats. I mean, to me, it kind of blew my mind. I'd heard of kits, but to actually make your own kayak seemed really crazy. This is awesome. And then these really cool young guys who are hilarious do this documentary where they build their boats and paddle from Alaska down to Seattle. And so that was actually how Griffin referenced this whole area when he mentioned the boat building school. He said, well, remember that documentary that we saw, the Paddle to Seattle, that's where that company is based. Yeah. So I was kind of excited about Pygmy. So the first thing we did when we moved here, I was planning on freelance graphic design and marketing. There's a lot of needs for social media, or I already had clients from Colorado that I was working for doing design stuff here and there, book jackets, whatever needed to be done, and helping them with their social media campaigns. So my intention was to come and work for myself and just kind of pick up clients as needed. Mm-hmm. And so Wooden Boat happened. I met Freya and John right off the bat.
Wooden Boat Festival?
Yep. So I went down to test paddle the kayaks and met them. And
so John's the owner of Pygmy Kayaks.
Yep.
And Freya's his daughter.
Yep. So I met both of them and started talking to them about what they were doing with their marketing, and just got really excited. And we started talking about all these ideas, and the relationship developed from there. And instead of kind of taking him on as a client, he ended up offering me a full-time job, and I dove right in excitedly, and I've been here for the last 2 years, and I'm loving it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very fun. So what kind of stuff have you learned being here?
Oh, what stuff have I learned? I've learned a lot about boat building. Yeah. And that was something that I never saw in my future.
Really?
Really. I mean, I'm kind of a computer gal. I've spent all my work history in front of a computer.
Yeah.
And very cognitive. So I haven't had as many physical challenges in my work. So the first thing, of course, I had to do was get a kit and build it. And I proceeded to have to watch YouTube videos on which way a drill went. It's like I was probably one of the more challenged builders.
Really?
But it was such a cool thing to do, and I felt really accomplished at the end of it. And
what boat did you build?
I built my boat, the Murrelet 4PD.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the first year you got here, you built that boat?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. My husband helped me in the garage, but I kept telling him, you can't do anything without me. I have to be here. I want to do it all. Yeah. So he'd be there, and we'd have a beer, and we'd kind of slowly work. I'm sure it drove him crazy how slow I was, but It was great. It was a good experience, and I'm excited now to build another. So
what are you going to build now?
that new boat that doesn't have a name yet.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So you've been here a couple years, and you learned to build a boat. But tell me what's happening here at Pygmy Boats these days.
Well, I mean, to be very literal, at this very specific juncture, John is currently paddling up in the north near the Arctic Circle on Great Slave Lake, and John's the owner.
He's up there by himself paddling around?
He's up there by himself paddling around, yep, which is awesome. 70-year-old man out kayaking all by himself.
That's
great.
Amazing.
He checks in with us. And
does he?
lets us know he's okay, and then we try and talk about what needs to be done here, and then suddenly the connection will get bad. Oh, I'm teasing, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, currently we're coming out with this new boat, so we're really excited about that, and working on the manual for that.
So it's a new design. It's a little bit different than your other boats?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's if anyone's familiar with our boats, it's kind of a blend of the Arctic Tern 14 that's been really popular with a lot of petite women paddlers, and it takes the lower rear deck of the Murrelet and puts that on this hard chine 14-foot kayak, 22.5-inch beam. It's a really fun, sporty little kayak that I had the honors of taking out in the surf a few weeks ago, and discovering that I actually really like kayak surfing a lot, and so that's a new taking my surfing background and blending that with my kayaking and starting to try on a new little sport.
Versus surfing in a kayak.
Yep.
So some of the same principles would apply, but you're obviously moving. Let's pause here for just a second. We're back now, and we were talking, Laura, about kayak surfing versus surfing on a surfboard. Mm-hmm. And so you learned to kayak surf recently. What was that like?
Well, I would say I'm still learning. It's definitely along. Yeah, I'm learning all these sports. There's always constantly growth to happen, but I'm very new to kayak surfing. So. Yeah.
It's pretty fun. And you were doing that in this new boat that you were telling me about.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Okay. So tell me, for people that don't know much about Pygmy boats, what kind of boats you offer and the range, and maybe a little bit about a range of costs and things like that.
Yeah, sure,
for
definitely.
your products.
Well, we have, at this point, like 21 different kayak models.
Really?
Yeah. So it gets a little difficult to really break it down, but we'll try and keep it the abridged version here. So we have a recreational line that's more 14.5-foot boats, larger cockpits, so people who have crankier knees might want a larger cockpit, making it easier to get in and out of a boat. They're more stable, so folks who want to go do fishing or photography from kayak, stability is a good factor. Mm-hmm. And then we have a touring line as well that's more 17-foot long boats. We were just voted Best Wooden Kayak a year ago by Sea Kayaker magazine, so our coho is our second best. Thank you. Yeah, we're very honored. That was definitely...
And the coho, that's been around a long time, right?
It has, yeah. It's the one that was in the Paddle to Seattle documentary, and it's honestly our second best selling boat kit. Our first is the Pinguino 145, the recreational
which is only
boat.
2 or 3 years old, right?
Yeah, as soon as it came out, it quickly became our best-selling boat.
So in a recreational boat like that, will that boat roll and you can do all those things if you want to, or is it not really?
Yeah, that boat will. You can learn to roll almost any kayak.
Okay. The
wider the beam, it tends to be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
But of course, there's always buts and ands to any of those statements.
Yeah.
Like the Pinguino 145 4PD, which has the swept-down deck and a little smaller cockpit, tends to be easier for larger guys. Mm-hmm. Like you would probably find that easier to roll, and you'd probably be more comfortable in that than maybe even the Murrelet.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to start rolling at my age.
Oh, you should get a lesson from Freya. She's great. Come wooden boat when she's doing the demonstration. You should get out there.
Oh man. Okay, so we were talking about the different models available.
Yeah.
So you said you got your recreational, then your touring.
Mm-hmm.
Is there another classification, or is it like a racing boat? Or
if somebody told me they wanted racing, I'd probably put them in. You really just want less frictional drag if you want to be racing.
Yeah.
So something that's narrower, longer, so you have a higher top-end hull speed. The coho is a very fast boat. So
how long is that boat?
That's 17.6.
Yeah.
A lot of times people have a few different things that they're looking for, so we try and work with that to try and help them find what boat. If they call and they say, well, I'm 5'2", and I really want stability, then that makes it pretty easy. You know, Pinguino 145 4PD if they're a little petite woman and they want stability. But it starts getting more difficult when people don't necessarily have an idea of what it is that they want. But so there are certain combinations that make it easy. Like if someone's looking for a fast boat that they can roll, maybe the version 1 Roulette could be the one that they're looking for. But it often involves lots of questions. But we certainly do it every day. We chat with people, and they tell us what they're looking for, and we do our best to try and direct them in the best direction. Barring that, test paddling.
That's because you can test. You've got versions of all your boats here.
We do, and we have people
test paddle,
fly in
which is awesome.
from all over the country just to test paddle. You know, they'll kind of put it together with another trip where they're going to Victoria and they're swinging through to test paddle on their way. So,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, it is great.
And you've got other boats besides kayaks, I think, a couple boats.
Yeah, we do. We have a canoe and we have a wine glass wherry.
Yeah, so tell me about the canoe.
Well, the canoe is a taiga tripper, so it's really meant for expedition trips. John's done a number of extended trips where he's had it really loaded down. I think he said 600 pounds at one point.
Seriously?
Yeah.
So is that a two-person canoe, or can be single or double?
Well, it's really a two-person canoe.
Yeah.
But you could throw kids in the middle. So. And
that's a traditional canoe where you sit or you go down on one knee and you paddle with a single-bladed paddle. Depending
on the person's preference. Yeah.
Okay.
The one we have in the showroom kind of has the nice, comfortable seat backs.
Oh, okay.
So, throw the cooler and a picnic in and go for a little paddle. Yep.
And how long did you say that boat is?
The canoe's 20 feet.
20 feet. Yeah. And that's a stitch and glue design, which all your boats are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, I just said 20 feet, didn't I? I'm questioning that right now. Sometimes the numbers went in my head. 17 feet, excuse me.
17 feet,
yeah.
Okay. And then the wine glass wherry, tell me about that one.
Well, that's a 14-foot, 48-inch beam rowing boat. Yeah.
And I've seen photographs of that boat with a couple getting married, or they just got married or something.
Yeah, it's a popular one for things like that.
Yeah, that's
so elegant.
Cool. Where was that taken?
I don't know where that photo was taken.
Did Freya take that?
No, that wasn't a Freya photo. That was actually their wedding photo shot.
Oh,
they sent
really?
it to us. Yeah, which is awesome. Our customers sent us some amazing photos.
Cool.
Yeah, it is.
I love photos like that.
That's beautiful.
So if people are interested in the Paddle to Seattle documentary, can you look at that online for free somewhere?
I'm not sure if they still have. They did have it online for free.
Okay,
at one point.
If you search for Paddle to Seattle, you might be able to find it.
You might. We certainly sell the documentary on our website, so people can buy it there.
Yeah.
There's trailers online that they can check out for free. Obviously, that gives them an idea of what the documentary is like. But those guys are hilarious. I went into it thinking that it was going to be this hardcore documentary expedition, and it's just two best friends having a great time and kind of showing that, anybody can do it if they just put their minds to it and take it one paddle stroke at a time.
Now, where did they start from, Laura?
I think Skagway. I'm not even remembering.
In Alaska.
Yeah.
So they had a long
paddle down
trip. What kind of boats were they paddling?
They were in the Coho.
Yeah.
The one that was just voted best wooden kayak.
Okay. So for people listening that don't know what stitch and glue is, can you just give us a brief description of that?
Yeah, definitely. So stitch and glue is just a method of construction that attempts to make it easy for people who don't have any woodworking experience to be able to build their own kayak at home.
Yeah.
So the first step is just to glue your panels to their full length, and then those panels get wired up around temporary frames. You glue the seams, pull the wires, and then fiberglass the boat inside and out, and the fiberglass fills in the stitch holes.
So you literally stitch the boat together, these pre-cut panels.
Yeah, we kind of have some models hanging in our showroom that show what it looks like with the stitches in, and a number of people walk in and say, "Oh, it's just like sewing." And I mean, that's a fair comparison.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's very magical. I love it when you get the panels cut and you start stitching it together and it takes shape. It's really magical.
Yeah, it really
fun.
is. And I think that's the point, that once you get to that point, it looks like a boat. It's you get really excited.
Yeah.
It's like where you want to start speeding up and getting the boat done.
Now, do you sell plans for the boats also if people want to cut their own parts and get their own wood and stuff?
We offer some plans for older models. Honestly, we sell very little plans.
Yeah.
And we've noticed a trend that when people buy plans, they then come back and order a kit.
Oh, really?
It is is a lot of work.
It's like,
to
really?
make a
I want to
boat
cut
from
all this
land.
out and do scarf joints and all that?
Yeah, it's actually a lot of work to make a boat from.
Are you using
from
puzzle
plants.
joints in all your kits?
We don't. We actually have more success with a butt joint.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, a scarf joint is a little more difficult for people at home to get lined
Right.
up appropriately.
Yeah.
And the butt joint we've used for years and years. We've had a lot of success with it. So.
Okay.
And it's never the butt joint that fails if a if a kayak goes flying off a car down the highway.
Yeah.
It's one of the very well reinforced areas.
Yeah, so you reinforce it with fiberglass tape and epoxy type of thing.
Yeah. These boats are really rugged when they're complete. I think a lot of people see wood and they think, well, is that durable? And
Yeah.
I mean,
And they're pretty lightweight for their size, aren't
that's
they?
the advantage.
Compared to composite boats or plastic boats.
Yeah, they're very lightweight. The wood core does make it possible to make a much lighter boat. And I think that's another misconception. People see wood and think it's going to be heavy, but that's one of the advantages to using wood.
Yeah. Do people prefer the Euro-bladed paddles versus Greenland, or do you have any experience?
Oh,
What do you
yeah,
think
that's
about
a fun
that?
one right now.
'Cause I know
Yeah.
John was starting to use a Greenland paddle, right?
Yeah, I personally love a Greenland paddle as well.
Yeah.
And for those that aren't familiar with the Greenland paddle, it's a long, skinny blade that a lot of people call a stick. So it looks really narrow. I was out the other day using one, and this guy was amazed that it worked. So
Yeah.
it just looks like it's not
It
going
looks like
to work.
it wouldn't push you through the water, right? Because it's so narrow.
Yeah, but I really love it. I learned to roll with one, and a lot of people told me it was much easier to learn to roll with one, and I could see that. I definitely I feel very comfortable with it for rolling and bracing. It's easier on joints. It has less frictional drag in the water, so it's actually more efficient. It has a more ergonomic place for your hands.
Do you paddle a little bit higher cadence with that type of paddle, or you can without putting stress on your joints, or is that
You can. This is where it starts to get a little more
kind of like
technical.
a bicycle in a lower gear, pedaling a little faster, more efficient?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the only time I notice a difference between how much the difference in push with a Greenland paddle versus a Euro is in that very first stroke.
Okay.
And then after that, you just don't
Yeah,
need all
notice
that
the
blade
difference.
face to maintain momentum.
Right. I wonder if the square inches of the blade, if you measured the whole thing on a Greenland paddle, would be equivalent to the Euro blade.
The surface area, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Someone else asked me that recently, and I'm
Yeah.
not exactly sure.
I wonder if it's probably a little bit less, I would think. I don't know for sure, but
The story I've been told, and I don't know how true this is, but is that, well, first of all, people joke that in Greenland there aren't any trees, so they had to make do with whatever driftwood came up on shore, and so that was the style. But I think there is more to it. It's a 5,000 year plus old paddle, so
Right.
I like to think that in that amount of time design was honed in.
Yeah.
Whereas the Euroblade is much younger.
yeah.
And the story I heard was that when sea kayaking was making this revival, a bunch of the paddlers that were kind of bringing sea kayaking back were whitewater paddlers. And so they didn't want to go out and get another blade. They just took their Euro big
interesting.
face blades that you need in dynamic water and use that in sea kayaks. So I don't know how true that is. But.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So can you give me a rough price range for your kits?
Yeah, absolutely.
Laura?
So the kits are all around $1,000 for a solo kayak. The most expensive boat that we have is the Wineglass Wherry, which is the rowboat.
Yeah.
That's $1,500.
Okay.
So that's all for the kit.
What's included in the kit?
It includes the fiberglass, the epoxy, all the panels are pre-cut. It doesn't include the varnish. People like to customize their boats in different ways, so they can do paint, varnish. There's a number of accessories, so you can accessorize out your boat as you want to.
Yeah.
So yeah, around $1,000 for the solo kayaks and $1,500 for the wherry.
Okay. And is there one of your boats, if somebody wanted to buy the simplest boat to build out of all your boats, is there one that's simpler than the others, would you say, or not?
I wouldn't encourage people to make their decision based on that.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, a hardshine boat has less panels to wire up, so it's going to wire up quicker, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the performance quality you want in your boat.
Sure.
And it's not enough time difference to affect that decision. I feel like it's more important to get the boat that's right for you on the water.
Okay. And about how many hours roughly to build one of these boats?
It's 80 to 100 on average. That is an average. We have
completely
guys
finished, or just assembled and then you got to finish?
completely finished. Yeah, that's the average. That doesn't allow for cure times, so the average amount of time that people take is more like 3 months. It's like a winter project.
Yeah.
But we do have people who complete them as quickly as 3 weeks from
Really?
start to finish. Yeah, so that's the fast end. Some guys say it only takes them 60 hours, but that's really not the average.
Yeah, that's not my average.
No, I know. I'm always impressed when someone calls us 3 weeks later and says, 60 hours, I'm done.
That's impressive. Well, anything else about Pygmy or anything else you want to talk about today? Share with the listeners?
No, I'd say if you're in the area, if you find yourself in Washington, stop by and test paddle. Come see our showroom. It's a beautiful location down here in Point Hudson, and it's always fun to test paddle, so come check us out.
Yeah, and you got test paddling during the festival this year.
We do. We'll have test paddling during the festival.
September.
Freya will be doing a rolling demonstration, so that'll be fun. And John is scheduled to present on kayak touring as well, if he makes it back from the Yukon.
Well, that's kind of where he started paddling the Yukon, right?
Yeah.
When he got out of Harvard?
Yeah, he spent years up in the Queen Charlotte, so our first boat was named
Right.
after that. I mean, years living out of his kayak. He's an inspiration.
That's amazing.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
that was really a fun interview I did with John.
Yeah,
It was a 2-part
he's fun.
interview.
Yeah.
Very good.
He's got a good long story. For sure. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
we cut it way down. It was still a couple hours long. Well, very good, Laura. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate being on the podcast, and best of luck to you and everything you do here at Pygmy.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say one last thing. If you don't think you can build a boat, let me be a testament to that.
Really? Okay. It can be done,
Yeah, it
even
can
for
be
an
done.
amateur with
Yeah, even
no
for an
woodworking
amateur.
experience.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Laura, for doing that interview. It was great to hook up in Port Townsend and talk shop and have some fun. And I wish you the very best at Pygmy Boats. That is a really awesome place. And if you could, get me a job there, okay? All right. Talk to John for me. Tell him you know this really smart guy that would like to work there. So anyway. Okay, I would love it if you would connect with me by email, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, as I talked about previously, by going to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube if you look for Wooden Boat Dan. And you can leave a voicemail message for me on my homepage if you click on the button to the right that says Leave Voice Message. So please do that. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to help support the podcast, go to my homepage. On the right-hand side, there's some banners for companies that sell boating and related products, and also Amazon. And if you click on those banners and make a purchase, I get paid a small commission. Helps defray the costs of my fuel and things like that, as I do a little bit of traveling locally at least, and do interviews and have fun. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. If you've got feedback for me, please shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, have a great week. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. God bless. This is Wooden Boat Dan, over and out until we meet again next week.